Hello class, this presentation is titled Visualizing Hypothesis Testing. My name is David Rodriguez. Agenda. We'll start off the presentation by visualizing hypothesis to test mean. Second, visualizing hypothesis to compare two groups. Visualizing hypothesis to compare process efficiency. Visualizing hypothesis to test correlation among two datasets. And lastly, summarizing important takeaways from the presentation. Visualization number 1, test for a mean. In this graph, we are comparing the probability of defect by number of defective widgets. The red line is a bell curve. Its highest point of a bell curve is their mean. Based on the graph, in its highest point right in the center, the mean of this graph is 0. Research question. On average, are the widgets from Acme Widget Company defect-free? So this is what we are trying to figure out from the graph. The null hypothesis. On average, the widgets are not defect-free. The alternative hypothesis is as follows. On average, the widgets are defect-free. Based on the bell curve and its mean of 0, we can definitely say that on average, the widgets are defect-free. So we can reject the null hypothesis. Visualization number 2, comparing two groups. In this graph, we are comparing the red group, represented by the minor league, by the red group, represented by the blue bell curve, which is the major league. And we are comparing number of home runs by fraction of team that are home run hitters. Research question. Does the average major league team have more home run hitters than its corresponding minor league team? The null hypothesis is as follows. On average, both major and minor leagues have equal home run hitters. The alternative hypothesis, on average, major and minor leagues have different home run hitters. Going back to the graph, the minor league, which is represented by the red bell curve, their mean is around a 0.28, while the major league, which is represented by the blue bell curve, is around 0.36. So there is a difference. Therefore, we can say that on average, major and minor leagues have different home run hitters, and we can reject the hypothesis. Visualization number 3, efficiency comparison. In this graph, we are comparing two groups, the red and the blue. The red group, demonstrated by the red bell curve, its highest point or its mean is at 30, while the blue group, its bell curve and its highest point or its mean is at 50. The research question. The efficiency curves of the red and blue teams were recorded. Do the teams have equal mean efficiencies? The null hypothesis. The red and blue teams have equal efficiencies. The alternative hypothesis is as follows. The red and blue teams have unequal efficiencies. Well, based on the difference in means, we can definitely say that the red and blue teams have unequal efficiency, therefore we can reject the null hypothesis. Visualization number 4, correlational test. A German study tested how larger industrial use vans utilized gasoline. One of their analyses plotted mile per gallon, (mpg), versus the weight of the various vans in the study. After plotting the data on a scatter plot, the researchers performed a correlational test and found a significant correlation. However, they forgot to state their hypothesis test in their published paper. In the graph here, which is represented by plotting a scatter plot graph, we are comparing the weight by the miles in US gallon. The important question: what were the study's null and alternative hypotheses? The null hypothesis is as follows: there is no correlation between weight and miles in US gallon. The alternative hypothesis is that there is a correlation between weight and miles in US gallon. Based on the graph and the p-value of 0.0001, we can then say that there is a correlation between weight and miles, and we can reject the null hypothesis. The important takeaways. Creating hypothesis test. The null hypothesis represents no major difference between the population and a result from a sample test, or it plays a devil's advocate. The alternative hypothesis demonstrates a major difference between the population and the result from the samples test, meaning that something happened. Using visualizations. Visualizations like graphs can assist in formulating research questions and conveying a hypothesis test. Visualizing data assists in identifying patterns, trends, and correlations that are not apparent in text-based data. Thank you so much for watching. If there are any questions, please leave them in the comments.